If you believe that you are anxiously attached, that you are an anxious, preoccupied attacher, there is a good chance that you might not be. You might actually be a fearful avoidant, disorganized attachment. How does this happen? Well, if your entire relationship history is largely with emotionally unavailable partners, such as narcissists or dismissive avoidance, that anxious attachment side of the disorganized attachment would be the one that would be consistently activated, leading you to believe that you are an anxious attacher. But you might not actually be. There are differences between a fearful avoidant and an anxious preoccupied attacher, and it starts in childhood. Let's get to the root of this so you can see if you're actually an anxious preoccupied or a fearful avoidant. In childhood, anxious attachers generally had a stable childhood environment. Both parents generally in the household, generally pretty stable overall. Maybe both parents were present and emotionally available at home, but then work demands changed, financial demands changed, and the parents then became largely out of the household. Now the emotional needs are no longer being met. Or maybe you had a narcissistic parent and another parent that was anxiously attached. So your emotional needs get met by one parent, sometimes by the other one, but then sometimes the narcissistic parent takes away your emotional needs and makes you cater to their needs, which again is your emotional needs being met, but then taken away. That's how anxious attachment is created, when your emotional needs are met sometimes, but then they're removed other times, which creates a fear of abandonment because it teaches your mind when your emotional needs are met, they might be taken away, which creates an attachment anxiety. But anxious preoccupied, true anxious attachers rarely have trauma in their background. Capital T or lower T, it's usually not there. Fearful avoidance, on the other hand, they typically grew up in chaotic environments, sometimes even suffering abuse and trauma, capital T or lower T. Could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Usually very chaotic, turbulent environments. Maybe a parent was an alcoholic or a drug addict, really nasty, messy divorces, physical abuse, other types of assaults and trauma. And that creates disorganized attachment because there's emotional neglect coupled with that chaos and intermittent reinforcement that creates both an anxious preoccupied and a dismissive avoidant attachment, because that's what fearful avoidants have. They have both attachment styles. But the subconscious mind will drive you to what your core wound is. Now, the core wound for an anxious attacher is abandonment because they fear that their emotional needs will be taken away, which is abandonment. Fearful avoidance, on the other hand, their core wound is betrayal because in some way, shape, or form, their parents or caretakers, the people that were supposed to be there for them, betrayed their trust and hurt them and weren't there for them the way they needed. So it creates this deep wound, this deep belief that love equals pain, love equals betrayal, that if you love someone deeply, they will hurt you. So this drives them right into the arms of partners that confirm their fears, such as narcissists or severe dismissive avoidance. They fear they're going to be betrayed, so they partner up with partners that do betray them. And it creates that subconscious loop. It validates the subconscious mind. See, I was going to be betrayed. Now, fearful avoidance, because of that chaotic environment, are far more likely to find that chemistry and that excitement and that spark with a toxic partner and find a healthier partner boring. And it's all because of their subconscious mind and that chaotic, turbulent childhood. The subconscious mind is like a big library, a big database of every human interaction. It remembers things that we don't even consciously remember. So when the fearful avoidant is dating somebody new that is emotionally unsafe and toxic, their subconscious mind will recognize that. It'll pick up on verbal cues and clues from this person and give them anxiety. But the feeling of anxiety, that rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, jitteriness, their conscious brain will confuse for excitement. So they'll think that there's an excitement, a chemistry, butterflies, and a spark, when in reality it's anxiety because their brain is trying to warn them to stay away from this person. But on the flip side, when they get in front of a partner that is emotionally safe, a partner that is emotionally available and healthy, Their subconscious brain will recognize that too, and they won't get anxiety. But the problem is, their conscious brain will think that lack of anxiety means there's no excitement, there's no chemistry, there's no spark, and this person is boring. So the relationship pattern with a fearful avoidant is to hold on to and become anxious with toxic, emotionally unavailable partners and push away healthy partners, not believing that the love is real when they do get it, and sabotaging the relationship by creating chaos and fighting, or thinking that person's boring and there's no excitement and no chemistry, so ending the relationship because of that. But if your pattern is to really get anxious with toxic partners and find other ones boring, and you have capital T or lower T trauma and chaos in your history, chances are you're probably a fearful avoidant. But if you don't have that problem of finding people boring, but you do sometimes get anxious and latch on to unavailable partners and try to earn their love, and you had a stable childhood that maybe had some issues, but no capital T or lower T trauma, chances are you are a true anxious, preoccupied attacher. But so many times, people that are actually fearful avoidant think they're anxious, preoccupied when they're not. Look at your own childhood and relationship history. Look and see what your core wounds are. Is your biggest fear betrayal or is it abandonment? Now keep in mind, fearful avoidance, they also fear abandonment too, but that betrayal wound is paramount. So take a look, see what you actually are.